Let me start recording. I've taught like this first section before. So I've taught this class before, but I haven't taught like all these sections before. So some of this is a little bit new to me too, or how the book presents it. I guess not, the material is not new so much as how the book is presenting it. So I've taught 5A. I haven't taught anything past 5A, if I'm being honest. And I haven't taught anything in chapter 7. Chapter 7 was new. So it's also part of the reason why it's taking me a little longer to get those videos and notes up. I'm having to create them from scratch. The rest of them I kind of had at least some blueprints on. Okay, so we went over 7. 7 was about probabilities. Y'all took a test over it. So we're kind of past that material now. But chapter 5, 5A, and 5B. So 5A, what did all we talk about? Where is my folder? So we talked about sampling methods. I know that was one thing. They define statistics. They talk about how to do a statistical study, the population sample, population parameters, sort of thing. So these are all things you should sort of know. You should know what the population is, the sample, population parameter, and sample statistic. Then they have the 5 steps to conducting a study. We talked about how to choose a sample. We talked about like 4 different methods of sampling. I talked a little bit about bias. We talked about observational studies versus experiments, and treatment and control groups, and placebos and placebo effects, and single and double blind studies, and case control studies, which are basically observational studies that group themselves into cases. And what else? Margin of error, I think, is what we ended in with 5A. So there is a lot of stuff from like 5A that I feel like, if I'm being honest, that's going to be the easy section to kind of write questions over, right? It's going to be like, do you understand this sort of thing? 5B, their questions I feel like are a little more weird. They're going to require you to do a little bit more thinking and be probably a little more critical. I don't feel like there's necessarily like one correct answer. It's more like how you're justifying your answer, right? And in a lot of those sorts of scenarios they're giving you in 5B. Are there any questions? 5B was over analyzing an argument, or not analyzing an argument, analyzing a study and verifying. How was it titled again? Let me go. I need to pull that up anyway. Hold on. I like to have the book in the background because I looked over this work, and I do go look over y'all's work, but I don't always know what the book was really wanting sometimes. So it's good to have like kind of their input with what they're expecting. Where am I going?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with 5B, basically it's justifying our own opinion since there's like more than like one correct way.
I wouldn't say it's like necessarily like I wouldn't necessarily like say it's maybe like an opinion. Like there are certain facts you could probably like talk about that, but like what you have to say has to be factual, right? Like you have to show some sort of understanding of it. And that's with like certain problems. Like certain problems, I think they're leading you into like what they kind of want you to say, to so to speak, right? They're like, this is the concept we just introduced. What's wrong in this problem? And it's like it's literally the thing they just introduced like some of the time. So in those problems, I think there's like more of an expected answer there. But like some of them, it's like there are different ways to sort of justify it. There's different things that you might think of that I won't think of, right? Or something. So it's not really like a what do I say? It's not really as objective as like a lot of the other math that we're doing. There is a bit of subjectivity there, is what I'm trying to say. They're not purely subjective. There are some facts you have to get at. So, but there's no like one correct way to justify things. Probably there's probably multiple ways to sort of justify or to say the same thing. And so some of it's going to have to be sort of written in your own language, right? Okay. So on these, they want us to define the population. They want us to define the sample. And then we're going to talk about population parameter and sample statistic. Okay. 15 says, in order to gauge public opinion on the president's plan to contain Iran's nuclear program, the Pew Research Center surveyed 1,001 Americans by telephone. And so, in general,
bear with me here, ma'am. You know, but sometimes I forget. Yeah,
it's okay. You can turn it off now. So
oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Never mind. In general, the population is going to be what? And the sample is what? Do you understand like how they're doing this sort of thing? The start, a little diagram in your book, right? We get a population. We're drawing a sample from that population. We want to get some kind of knowledge about a larger population. It might be like all the American people, right? We're not going to go survey all the American people. That's impractical. We're going to take a sample of them. Hopefully the sample is representative. We take a sample, we get the sample statistic. From that, we're going to draw a population parameter. And from that, that's going to describe something about our population. So we're trying to get at some sort of information about our population. We're doing that from picking like a subset of it. How you pick that subset determines whether it might be biased or well, I think everything is biased to some degree, right? Like almost never your sample is going to be exactly representative of your population. There's always going to be like, almost always there's going to be a little bit of discrepancy there, right? So with that said, we want to try to minimize the bias is what we're doing, right? I don't think you're ever going to probably purely eliminate the bias most of the time, but there are ways in which we can sort of minimize the biases that exist. So in 15, if we want to talk about the population, that's talking about the whole set. If we talk about the sample, that's talking about the subset. And then we got to talk about the statistic or the parameter. And so if I'm reading this, what is the population? What is the whole group that they're trying to get information about?
Americans.
Yep. So the population would be all Americans. They're trying to talk about all Americans. We're not going to go survey all Americans. They're going to survey who? Just the 1,001 people is what they're talking about. That's our sample. And let's do sample statistic. So then what's my sample statistic? What are they doing? What are they trying to get at here?
The public opinion on the president's plan to contain Iran's nuclear program.
Yeah, they're trying to get the public opinion on the nuclear program. So this is the public opinion. And the keyword here, that's the little metric that we want. If this is a sample statistic, this is the public opinion from where? Or of? Who is this?
Oh, Americans.
If this is sample,
Oh, from the 1001
yeah,
Americans.
this is coming from the 1001 sample survey. 1001 survey. Like what? This is like I just don't know why they had to throw that extra one person in there. Like let's do 1001 people instead of 1,000. Okay, but if this is sample stat, then I'm probably doing these out of order from what they listed them or something. I think maybe, but they're there as long as we get all four of them down. Population, the samples, the sample statistic, and the population parameter are the four things that they're looking for. And so this is the public opinion on nuclear program. I feel like this is the correct order to put them in though, maybe I'm just being crazy, but from the process that we do things, right? We want to say something about all Americans. So what are we going to do? We're going to sample 1,001 people. We're going to get their opinion on the nuclear program. We're going to use this to make an inference about the population parameter. Are there any questions over this, over the structure of these things? Okay. I don't think it's gonna go up again. I'm gonna, that's fine. 17, same thing. We want population. We want the sample. Sample stat. And population parameter. I feel like I can't spell worth of anything today for some reason. I'm like watching myself misspell, and I'm like, that's misspelled. And it's not stopping me from misspelling it. So, okay, so astronomers typically determine the distance to a galaxy, huge collection of billions of stars, by measuring the distance to just a few stars within it and taking the mean average of these distance measurements. Okay. So this one is a little bit weird, but what is their population here? What are they trying to get at? What is the big thing that they're trying to get at?
I feel like it should be the distance to the galaxy, but actually it's just the galaxy.
Yeah, so this would be distance to the galaxy. Distance would be a metric, right?
Right.
Distance from galaxy to galaxy. Yeah, from galaxy to galaxy.
Or Earth to the galaxy, another galaxy.
Is it going from Earth? Distance galaxy? Wait a minute. From Earth to galaxy, yeah. That's probably more accurate. And so, like we said, if this is the metric that they're doing, and the metric is on galaxies, right? And so galaxies would have to be our population. So this one is probably a little bit weird. Are they doing average distance? Is that what they're calculating?
Well, it's just worded really vaguely.
I think they want the average distance. We should probably put average on there. Let me see what the book's saying. I'm pretty sure that's what they're saying. Yeah, we'd have to say the average, right? Because it wouldn't be a certain distance. A galaxy is a collection of stars. You want to know the average distance of those stars. The population would be the galaxy. The sample would be what? Them things right there, right? Just a few stars that we're looking at. So we're not going to go measure billions and billions and take billions and billions of measurements. We're only going to look at a few stars. From Earth. They say all the stars within the galaxy is what they say for their population. Which, if you say the galaxy, that you're talking about all the stars in the galaxy. One and the same. Okay. Questions about this one? I think the concept mainly is that we have a set and we have a subset. The sample stat is the measurement or the statistic on the subset. This is the measurement that we're trying to get at that is on our population. So hopefully if we did our sampling right and did everything unbiased, right, this thing will be pretty close to this thing. Okay. Describe how you would apply the 5 basic steps of a statistical study to the following issues. You want to determine what % of high school seniors regularly use a cell phone while driving. Let me go read what they say in the book. Just so I use consistent language. So step 1, they say state the goal of your study. That is determine the population you want to study and exactly what you'd like to learn about it. So in this example, if I want to determine what % of high school seniors regularly use their cell phone while driving, what is my population and what do I want to know about it?
I think the high school seniors.
Mm-hmm. And then what do I want to know about it? Like, what is my population parameter going to be?
The time they use a cell phone. I guess the amount of time that they use a cell phone, and that's, I guess, is.
Did it say
Yeah.
you want to determine? So the word's right there. What?
Percentage.
The percentage?
Yeah, what percentage? So we want to know what percentage. So we want to know the percentage of them that use their cell phone while driving, right? Okay. So then step 2 is to pick your sample. So what do they say? Choose a representative sample from the population. So how might you want to go picking a representative sample? Is that what they're asking? And it just says, they're not even asking how. I think they're just asking how does that apply? So if we want to choose a representative sample from our population, this is sort of step one. Step one is to identify your population and then identify what you want to measure about that population, what you want to get at, what your population parameter is. Step two is to pick a representative sample. So they're not even asking us how, they're just kind of asking us how the step applies. So what they say is choose a representative sample of
High school seniors.
high school seniors. That's kind of silly. It might be worth talking about how to do that. Eventually get it. Okay. High school. Okay. So how might you choose a sample here?
I said randomly select like 20 seniors, or I think 30 seniors from each high school in the county.
Yeah. I was also thinking something you might want to do is also stratify your sample into people that have cell phones and people that don't. But I think most seniors now at this point probably do have the cell phone.
Yeah, but the study could also be affected if you're like, if say you choose to do it in New York City where very few people drive, or, you know, if you do it in an area that has absolutely no public transportation.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay, step three is going from your sample to your sample statistic. So you're going to collect raw data from the sample and summarize these data by finding sample statistics. So this is, we picked our seniors that we want to survey. Step three is the step where you're actually conducting the survey, right? So what do they say in the back? Determine the percentage of those in the sample who claim to use a cell phone regularly while driving. So basically you're conducting the survey. I'm just gonna read real quick. I speak, I think is where we're gonna go. I believe you conduct survey, ask the question, and get the number. This is where you're actually getting the data from high school.
So, Professor,
Mhm.
was it percentage? The sample was the percentage, and it was also the population parameter.
No, the sample is the people that you chose from the high school seniors.
Oh, okay.
So the population parameter is the number or the data that we want on the population. The sample is this subset that we're picking from there. And so we pick a subset. We're going to conduct a survey. We're going to get the data from the high school seniors that we selected. This is getting you're getting the sample statistic here, right? This is the step to getting your sample statistic.
Okay.
Step four, after we have our sample statistic, we want to take this thing that we learned about just the 5 people that we surveyed or whatever it was. And if you just think about like this picture, I think it might help, right? We're starting our, because and be honest, like I wouldn't, if they asked me to do the 5 steps and I didn't have this book with me, I wouldn't know what the heck these 5 steps are. Like I understand the process, but like I don't necessarily break it apart in the same way that they do, right? It's like, okay, but it does help, right? This is the way we sort of think about things. We have a big population. So first you got to talk about your population and what do you want to learn about your population? The next thing is we pick a sample from our population. So maybe I could draw arrows sort of going this way, right? It's kind of going like a cycle sort of thing. And so we pick a sample from our population. Hopefully this sample is representative so that it minimizes biases. After we have our sample, we can start asking these people questions. We can get information and data and statistics about these people. So that is step 3. Step 4 is to generalize what we have sort of here in the sample statistics. And so this is really where your bias like starts throwing you off, right? If we did something with the bias, this is where this is not going to look like this one. They're going to look different. So step 4 is basically to generalize this. What do they say in the back? And for the percentage of all seniors who use a cell phone regularly while driving. So from like the people that we surveyed, they're going to try to say something about all seniors. And then after we get done with our sort of inferring about all seniors, we look at the information that we have from our study. And what did they say? Step 5 is draw conclusions, right? Determine what you learned and whether you achieved your goal. So we're going to look at what our data is saying. We're going to see if the data matches what we originally sort of thought. If it does, then it's confirming what we might believe, right? We might want to do more research into it. If it's not confirming what we believe, we might still want to do more research into it, see why it's not, see how it's doing, right? So the data tells you what the data tells you, right? And I've kind of said that in the notes. Like if someone is telling you to make the data say something, they're telling you to do something highly, highly unethical, right? So that's when you definitely quit that job and just like run out the other door. Assess results and formulate conclusions is all they say in the back. All right, so what sort of results might you have? What sort of conclusion? It's backwards, okay. So we try to look at the percentage of seniors that are using a phone while driving. So we look at the results and I don't know, it's what? Say 73% this year. Last year it was what? 70% something. So you might want to compare it to like previous years, see if it's going up, going down. That's what we're doing in this step, right? We're looking at the number, trying to look at what it might mean in context. Trying to look at other numbers and other studies that might be done, trying to see what they might look like in context. Okay. Was that 21, 27? You want to determine the average number of classes skipped by first-year students at a small college during a particular semester. State whether each of the following samples is likely to be representative and explain why or why not. Okay, so the first sample, they say 100 first-year students who belong to a sorority or fraternity. Sample 2 would be 100 first-year students who play a varsity sport. Sample 3 would be the first 100 first-year students whom you meet at the student union, or 100 first-year students taking honors humanity courses. So this is one of those things. There is a solution they're looking for, but it's not necessarily about you like just telling me the solution on this one, right? It's about you like sort of justifying your answer and explaining why the other ones are probably not as good. What do you think the book is saying? I'm not sure I would completely agree. Which one seems like the least bias? It's not an easy thing on this one, to be honest. I'm not sure.
The student union one.
They say the student union. Is that like completely unbiased, or what would you say? Because I mean,
if
it's. I'm sorry. What?
Well, if you're going to a commuter school,
Mm-hmm.
then that, I mean, the people that are at the student union are living on campus, and so they're probably more likely to attend class than the ones who have to drive there.
Yep, I absolutely agree. Right. I think, and this is an important point. Like, I think everything has a bias to some degree, but I think what they're trying to say is that this is less biased than maybe what someone that plays varsity sports. Why would this be more biased?
I mean, you could argue it either way.
Yeah, I do kind of feel like that might be the point on this one, but I think maybe like trying to understand where the book is coming from, or why they might say that this one is more biased.
Well, okay, so let's say these first years are playing a varsity sport. They're probably there on a sports scholarship. Depending on the state you go to, you have to, you know, maintain a certain GPA to do that. But, you know, we're
Good point.
in places where football is like end all be all, they aren't necessarily upheld to that standard.
Do they call them do they call them kinesiology here? Or is that might just be a weird? I know they do that at A&M. I don't know if they do that at other colleges. That's just a PE class. It's a really fancy way to say PE. Sorry, but like this is what I would think, right? These people are probably all taking the same classes as well. So if you want to know whether people are going to their classes or not, maybe selecting like a variety of classes might also be better. Because these people are going to major in sports, they're all going to be taking kind of the same schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to get like a variety of schedules out there probably to see if people really are going to their classes or not, right? Might even be something you want to stratify your sample into. 100 first-year students who belong to sororities or fraternities. Again, if you're in a sorority or fraternity, it depends which one you're in, but some of them actually make you go to class that remain in the sorority or fraternity, right? So again, that's going to be something that influences their participation with the class and whether they're at the class or not. And another thing, like you said, I didn't even think about the sports scholarships, but that's a really good point. These people might be on sports scholarships. Taking honors humanities classes. So these students are honor students. So in general, you would probably expect your honor students to come to class a bit more than the people that aren't honors, right? That's what they're saying with the participation there. What was that, 27? This is what they say, right? The third sample is most representative with respect to attendance. The others are biased towards certain subgroups. That's all they really say in the back. Are there any questions over this? It's really just like, I don't know, it's, to some degree, it's just playing devil's advocate and like trying to tell me what could possibly go wrong here, right? Like what is biased here, or these people are probably on scholarships, right?
So basically, sample 3 would be the correct answer because it's stratified sampling.
It's not stratified sampling. It's the least bias with respect to class attendance is what they're trying to claim.
Okay.
Although I wouldn't say like it still has bias in it, right? You like we said, the student union, if you're going to go interview people at the student union, you're probably going to get a larger selection of people that like are living on campus. If you're going, well, this is at a small college, so they may not have on-campus housing there. So that might be why they're saying that. But even with that, right, student unions are people that are going to be on campus more in general than people that are going to be like, you know, going to class just to go to class and then they got a job that they got to go to right after. They're not hanging around at the student union for the most part, right? So you do get some bias there. So you're going to have to find your own words to sort of describe these things in. I know I'm not going to write a lot of stuff out, probably on some of these. I'll probably talk a lot more than I do writing. All right, so with these, we want to identify the sampling method. So we have simple random sampling. So this is like we find some software or we find like a random number generator or something like that. There is some random sort of way that we are sampling things. Systematic sampling, this means like a simple system, right? We have a very, very simple system, like every 5th, every 10th, every 15th, something like that. Convenient sampling is like I'm sampling the people immediately in my class. These are like the easiest people to sample. It literally means whatever is the convenience. You're sampling it because it's the easiest for you to sample. Stratified sampling means we put things into strata or group, right? So if you go into like the social sciences, sometimes they'll talk about like social stratification. It's like when you group people by class, right? Sort of. It refers to the class structure. Okay. So we have what, 3 examples. A study of the use of antidepressants selects 50 participants between the ages of 20 and 29, 50 participants between the ages of 30 and 39, and 50 participants between the ages of 40 and 49. So these, they pretty much have one thing that you should be telling me. It should be one of those 4 things. There's not a lot of wiggle room on these. So what is it? What are we doing here? What sort of sampling is this 31?
Is it systematic
experiment.
sampling?
There's like 2 people at one
Oh.
time. Someone said systematic. What did someone else
I'm
say?
sorry. What?
I heard systematic from one person.
Okay, so okay, I was saying an experiment. So in an experiment,
Yeah, it's not like these are the 4 options up here.
oh, I'm sorry.
It's one of the sampling options. We're talking about sampling in this one.
I put stratified sampling.
Stratified sampling, yeah.
Okay, so why are we saying
It's stratified because of the participants in the age group.
you're grouping them by age bracket? So anytime you're creating subgroups, we're trying to create antidepressants in everyone, but we're creating subgroups of age brackets, right? And we're taking equal amounts of samples from each one of those randomly. So there is some random sampling within when we do stratified sampling. But the key word here, if they're breaking it into smaller groups,
Yeah, the 20, 29, and 50 of 40 and 40 of 30 and 39.
it's an I. Okay,
40
so
and 49.
now I feel like they're just messing with me on the spelling of stratified. So it's an I if you put it in stratified, but if you say strata, it's with an A.
Oh, so which way do you spell it? Okay, so here it's saying with an I.
Yeah, it is stratified and stratified. It's an I in stratified, but if you just talk about the grouping or strata, it's with an A. Sorry. Every 100th cast iron pipe that comes off an assembly line is tested for strength. So which one would you say what this one is?
It's tested for strength. A systematic sampling.
Yeah, keyword here, we're doing every 100. So if it's a really like simple system, like I'm doing every 10th of them, I'm gonna
Yeah.
go test every 100th of them. There's a very simple system. And then the last one says student ID numbers are randomly selected by a computer for a survey of student opinions on college athletics. So what kind of sampling is that?
Random sampling
Simple
That is,
random.
because it's generated.
that is random sampling. That is simple random sampling, right? I think you're just putting that word simple in front. We say random sampling. Good on target there. They just put simple just to kind of just distinguish it from maybe like stratified, because we do simple random sampling within the stratified, but there's some extra steps with the stratified, right?
Yeah, because you have a certain group.
Yeah, we start grouping them. So if
yeah.
we don't group them, but we do still just simple random, we still do random sampling. They call it simple random sampling. It's just they put that word simple to distinguish it from that one, I think.
So with the grouping, that means when you do a simple with the group, is it like you're just giving them one sample of something for each group? Like you're giving one item to each group, so to make it a simple random?
So you would get 50 participants from this age bracket. You
Right,
would,
no.
you would select these 50 participants in some sort of random way from this group.
Okay,
Is
right.
what that means. Like, so there is like within this, there is some like random sampling, right? That we're doing. These 50 participants are selected at random from this group, and these 50 participants at random from that group.
Okay.
But when we do simple random sampling, there's no grouping. We just do a random sort of, I don't know how they're doing it, by a computer.
Yes.
It's
Okay, I
kind of weird
understand.
because they have programs that generate quote unquote random numbers, right? It's like, well, there's a formula that's generating it. So is it really random? It works for being random. How about that?
So I understand what you're kind of saying, because random means like anytime or anyone.
Yeah, it means
like,
that everything should be
it's not
equally
calculated.
probable. It means that everything should be equally probable, right? But if I know what formula you're using to generate those numbers, I can tell you the exact next number that you're going to have, right? It's determinable. It's not random. I can tell you exactly which number you're going to have.
Right.
It's not equally likely for everything to happen. It's equally likely because we don't know. It's just such a weird ass formula that they use, right? That it's like, I don't know. Unless you're like really studying it, you're not going to know what the next number is. And it works for randomizing experiments. Like they are random enough to work for an experiment. So I don't know. What does it say? The type of study. Determine whether each of the following studies describes an observational or experiment. So if we do an observation versus experiment, what's like the key difference between those two things?
Observation is that you're watching
Mhm.
and you're measuring, but with the experiment, you're doing treatments.
Yeah, absolutely. You're more proactive when you're doing an experiment. You're creating a variable and you're creating a control group, right? And an observational, you're just sitting back and trying to look at what happened after the fact, so to speak, right? This one is like more active engagement. This is just you're looking and crunching the numbers on it. So if the study is an experiment, identify the control and treatment group and discuss whether single or blind is necessary. And if the study is observational, state whether it is a retrospective study, and if so, identify the cases and controls. Do they mean case study? That's what I was kind of wondering when I was reading through these notes. I'd really rather talk whether it's a case study. So I don't know. Retrospective means in the past, and I figure like most studies for the most part are retrospective. There might be a few studies that aren't. I was wondering that earlier.
In
I
the
would say
book, it
case study.
says, yeah, in the book, it says retrospective studies are also known as case studies.
Okay, so those words are interchangeable. Is that the way that
Yeah.
they're defining it? Okay. Okay. So it's a vocabulary thing. It's kind of silly, but usually when you mean retrospective, it means to look back at something.
So we have, okay, so so is this number 38, right?
Yeah, so if we look at 38, what does it say? In a study on the effects of magnets. Oh man, Magnets, how do they work? In a study on the effects of magnets on back pain, some subjects were treated with magnets, while others were given non-magnetic devices with a similar appearance. The magnets did not appear to be effective in treating back pain.
Okay, so we got a single blind placebo effect, and it's a experiment.
It is an experiment. So the first thing is it observational or experiment? And then this is an experiment because we're giving some the magnets, we're giving some not magnets, right?
Right.
We are actively giving them one or the other. Okay, so we want to identify control and treatment group. So the control group is what?
You the one with
control
the
group
replicas?
People, what?
The ones with the non-magnetic replicas.
The placebo magnet people, right?
Okay.
The variable group, what do they call it? The treatment group.
The patients with the magnetic device.
Real magnet people. Or the people that receive the real magnet. Discuss whether single or double blind.
Yeah, I think it's a single, but it may be a double because you got two people.
It's definitely single blind because the participant does not know whether they are getting the placebo or not, right?
Right. Double blind means the people that are administering the treatment don't know. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the people administering it, what does it say about them? Instead of some judges get a non-magnetic similar device, journal, okay. Does not say anything about the person administering it knowing whether it is or not. So we cannot say whether it is double blind based on what they gave us. There's
Right.
not enough information to conclude that it is double blind, so I'd
But
probably
it
say
is
it's not.
single blind for sure.
This is 38, so it's absolutely not even in the back on the odd answers. So I have no idea what the book really wanted. But we don't have enough information to say that it's double blind, so I would typically stick with single blind.
Okay.
If it was double blind, they would probably tell us explicitly the people administering the test did not know whether it was a magnet or not.
Okay.
Hey, Professor, could the other reason also be is because the treatment group and the control group, they don't know whether they're, the ones who have like the placebo, they don't know whether their back is like, if they say their back is feeling better because they have the placebo, they don't know it's a placebo. Could it also be the reason why it's a single blind?
So it's single blind, yeah, because they don't know whether they're getting placebo or the real deal, right? And they don't know either. It's blind because the person being experimented on, right, so to speak, doesn't know. So this is single blind means experimented. And this isn't double blind, but if we were talking about double blind, I can't spell anymore today. Double blind. Ooh. This one is single blind. I would not say it's double blind. So single blind means the experimented or the person taking the treatment doesn't know whether they're getting the placebo or the real deal. The double blind means the experimenter, the scientist behind it, doesn't know whether they're giving a placebo or not. So but they talked about that with like an ADD treatment, I think, in the notes or something like that. And then like the person would judge whether or not the person with ADD was responding better, right? Or something. It was like a I want to say they determined the person's attitude, right? And it was like something that was really super subjective. Like if and it's something that you could really say one way or the other, and you could really be like largely influenced, right? Is what they were trying to get at.
We skipped 35,
I did,
and I only pointed out because
and it's right here.
it
It's right here.
Abdul
I'm not sure why the book came to the conclusion that it did.
Okay, yeah, I'll go back to that.
Hey,
Right?
Lisa, that's funny because I'm
What?
doing 35 and he was on 30 and I said, okay, so he just missed it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and figure it out. So
I'll come
I was
back.
like, okay. So I said, okay, observation, control group 108, treatment, often lied or cheated. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
correct.
I'll come back to it in just a second. Like I
Okay.
didn't, I like forgot it, and I was like, oh, I missed that one, and I put it on the next page. It is on the next page.
That's funny. All right.
We'll
that's
come
good.
back around. I won't miss it. Study by Brown University social scientists found that 18.6% of first-year women students surveyed in an upstate New York college experienced sexual assault during the first year.
Huh? What number is that?
39.
Is it 39?
Mm-hmm.
Oh Lord. Okay. Okay, hold on. Yeah, all right.
So is this the first question they're going to ask? Oh man, I hope you don't say. Is this
Oh,
observational or experiment?
Observational.
That's
Definitely
observation.
observational. I hope you're not going with experimental. Okay. This is definitely observing. They're not going out and producing these results, right?
Right.
And
have
what
the
else did they
control
say?
group.
If study is observational, is it a case study?
Yes.
No.
It's a group study. It is a case study, but it's a group study.
So we
Because
want to
you're
think
looking
about
at the percentage of
so a
first-year
case
women.
so a case study is going to group your sort of population into certain groups. So is this naturally sort of grouping people into groups is what we want to think about. It just seems like they're just asking them one question. It doesn't seem like they're getting like sorted into like a I don't even know how you would do a placebo on this one. It's like kind of weird, right? They're not sorting them into like a treatment sort of scenario, a control group, treatment group sort of scenario. Not that I can see here.
So what is this like? What's the control group?
So a control group, oh man, I don't even know. That'd be hard to do on this one. I don't know. You'd have to.
Would it be the first-year women? First-year women students?
There is no control and there is no treatment because it's not a case study.
And by case study, you mean like retrospective?
Yeah.
Because they were already surveyed, right?
Yeah. So if there was a way to like maybe group people into people that had sexual assault versus people that had a placebo sexual assault, which I don't know what the heck that would be. Yeah, it's like doesn't make a whole lot of sense in this scenario, right? So it's not going to be like grouping itself into those sorts of groups. What we expect with the case study is that natural sort of grouping, right? These people smoked and these people did not smoke, right? What was their health after that is what we would look at, right? Something like that. But they like kind of naturally got sorted into like, if you want to look at occurrence of lung cancer, right? I guess, and you look at people that smoke versus not smoked. That would be like a case study because they naturally group themselves into smokers and non-smokers, so to speak. Here, we don't have that sort of grouping into a control, into a variable, right? There's not that sort of thing. It's just like one group of people, so to speak. And we're just getting a sort of metric on that one group. There's not subgroups happening here, so to speak. This is one sort of population we're talking about. Okay. A study at the University of Southern California separated 108 volunteers into groups based on psychological tests designed to determine how often they lied and cheated. Ooh, those with the tendency to lie had different brain structures than those who did not lie. So is this observational or is this experimental?
It feels experimental. Like I know the book says it's observational,
That's what I put observational.
but how are they finding out what their brain structures look like?
Well, it's not too much.
T-scan or something probably?
I think what they're really saying is that how often they lied and cheated. So I guess observational, they had to have somebody to observe them in their
No.
daily
No, so, so the
camera,
distinguishing thing between an observational study and an experiment is that in an experiment you create a control group and you create a variable group. So we're looking here,
They're just looking at what's already there.
they're looking at people's psychology, which is already there. They're not grouping. What are they doing? The variable here is lying and cheating, right? They're not
Mhm.
sorting people out into like liars and cheaters versus non-liars or cheaters. They're not sorting people out into brain structures, right? They're not doing a variable control situation here with regards to lying and cheating or to brain structures.
Yeah, they
So
just
they're
a test. That's what
they're
the
just
weird.
yeah, they're giving them a test and they're seeing how they perform on a test. They're observing.
Okay.
They're not influencing at all. They're just observing, right? The big question is, are you influencing this at all?
So I did it right.
Is what probably the good question to ask. And if you're not influencing things, then it's probably an observational, right?
Okay.
Because if we look back, what was it? The experiment.
So what's the control group?
Like in this
Is there-
experiment, we were definitely influencing things. We gave some the magnet and we gave some the placebo magnet. So there is an action that we are taking here. I guess we're taking action here, but it's not directly. Maybe
Control
that's a bad criteria, maybe, because there is some action. It's just not the same type of action, right?
Okay.
We're
That
not
makes sense.
actively putting them through something. We're just observing how they take a test, right? It's a bit different. We're not sorting them into the groups and creating those groups. That's observational. Is it a case study? That's the next thing. Or is it retrospective?
No, okay, so
And I think that's probably where the confusion's coming in, right? Because is this
Yeah.
retrospective?
How do you know if it's retrospective if they don't provide dates? Like, when did they do this?
well, see, I'm thinking more
So
so.
retrospective means that it naturally sorts itself into groups.
Well, see, they stated already that they separated 108 volunteers into groups. So I don't know the variable of the groups and what their position is, but I do know this that it's groups of the 108 volunteers. That's all I do.
So I think the way that they're grouping the group here is kind of irrelevant. They're not grouping it by lying and cheating or by brain structure. They're just creating these groups at random, I think is what it's saying.
Okay. So the
And
group,
then they administer the psychological test. And then after they administer the psychological test, they look at the brain structure.
so the variable is those with the tendency to lie, that with the different brain structure than those who did not lie. So that's the control group is the
So
difference.
this is observational. So if we want to look at observational, first we have to ask ourselves, after it's observational, we have to ask ourselves, is it retrospective? And it is, right? And I think that's where the confusion, because we do sort of have a control and a variable group, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how are these people sorting themselves? And I think you were getting at it, right?
The
Yeah.
ones who lie and the ones who don't.
Ones that lie and ones that don't. So we have a control variable.
So the
They
control
call it
group
variable, or
is-
what do they call it? There's a control and a variable. They call it treatment group, right?
Cases and controls.
Well, they
So the
call it
cases
treatment
are
group
the
and control group.
Ones who lie. And controls are the ones who don't.
All right, so at least I got it right. Jesus, treatment variable.
So this, it really does look like an
Got it right.
experiment,
I'm
right?
taking
It is that
notes.
part of it's because it's retrospective. Or that they like kind of naturally divide themselves into people that lie and don't lie.
All right.
Okay, 41 through 46 says, what type of statistical study is most likely to lead to an answer to the following questions? If the study is an experiment, identify the control and treatment group and discuss whether single or double blinding is necessary. If the study is observational, state whether it is retrospective study, and if so, identify the cases and controls. Okay, so does taking a multivitamin reduce the incidence of strokes? So how are they going to do this?
So, I guess this is a,
Would it be an experiment or would it be observational?
okay, so it's an experiment because they're taking multivitamins and seeing how they reduce the incidence of stroke. So is that an experiment?
Yeah, this is an experiment. We're going to actually assign people multivitamins. We're going to assign some people multivitamins. We're going to assign some people not multivitamins. So does it say about treatment and control group? It's an experiment. We have a treatment. People taking multivitamins. People not taking the multivitamins. It'll be really lazy and multi-V. All right, and then how would you want to do this? Would you want to do, first thing, I guess the first thing, would we want to do the single blind?
This is a single blind.
Would we want to do it double blind? I think the book says something, and I'm not sure I really agree with them, to be honest.
I mean, because they know that they're giving these people the multivitamins. So it's not like they're not aware of it.
You would give them a placebo, right? You could give them a sugar pill.
Yeah, I guess if you're going to place,
If you're going to do single blind, that would be like you have to give them a sugar pill, so they don't know whether or not they're taking the vitamin. The book on this one, and this is their sort of reasoning here. If I were doing an experiment, and like in my opinion, like I really feel like double blinds are the way to go. They give you the most sort of accurate results. And I'll explain why I said double blind, but the book actually says no blinding is necessary on here. And I kind of understand why they're saying that, because you know whether someone's going to have a stroke or not. And you're probably not really going to influence whether someone's having a stroke or not. It's one of those things, like it's not like an attitude sort of thing where it's an opinionated, subjective sort of opinion on, is this person behaving right? You know whether that person had a stroke. So we can give it to some people, we can not give it to others, right? There's no need to give these people a sugar pill. Just don't give them the pill. They're not going to have a placebo effect. Most likely, they're not going to have a placebo effect strong enough to prevent them from having a stroke if they were going to have a stroke, I think is what that's saying. Whether that's true or not is another thing that I'm not certain of. And that's why I would personally want to do a blind test or a double blind test. Because if I tell someone they're having a stroke, is that going to cause more hypertension for them and thus cause them to have a stroke? I don't know.
Isn't it that you have to? Okay, so
that's a good question. You know, I don't. That's the question that you would have to ask, and I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
So if I give someone, or if I don't give someone a pill, is that going to cause them more stress and cause them to have a stroke? I don't know.
I don't think nobody knows, but the thing is, okay, so isn't double blind only for the experimenters?
Double blind means both the experimenter and the experimentee are both not aware of which one is the placebo. And
Okay,
which
so
one's the real
one of them are aware, or both of them are aware, aren't they?
Single blind is where the experimenter or the person taking the treatment doesn't know. Double blind means neither the person taking the treatment nor the person giving the treatment knows.
So does neither one know that, Jesus, does neither one know that they have an incident of strokes? Neither one of those.
That's why they're saying that this one does not need blinding, because you're going to know whether they have a stroke or not. The blinding would be with respect to taking the pill, not to the stroke.
Oh, okay. All right, let's go.
So would it be neither single or double?
Yeah, they say that it needs no blinding. Is what the book says.
Okay.
Blinding because what they're arguing is that you're not going to influence someone to have a stroke, right? They're not going to be influenced to have a stroke by either taking it or not taking it, right? Or by not taking it, you're not going to have them placebo it. You're not going to placebo your way out of a stroke, is what the book is trying to argue. Although I'm not sure I would believe them completely on that. I really don't know. To be honest, that's not something I've studied extensively. I'm not a medical expert. Could not tell you. But I know one of the things that causes strokes is hypertension. So if you're doing something, like giving someone a placebo and let them know it's a placebo, then I think that could influence it personally. But like I said, I'm definitely not an expert in that field. The following summaries of a statistical studies give a sample statistic and a margin of error. Find the confidence interval and answer any additional questions. All right, so I think we're almost done with this section. We've got like 2 more, right? And we've got another whole chapter. All right. Margin of error. So polls conducted the day before an election for state senator. There are 2 candidates running. The poll shows 53% of the voters surveyed favor the Republican candidate with a margin of error of 2.5 percentage points. Should the Republican be confident that she'll have a victory party? Why or why not? So how do I find my confidence interval? That's the main important thing to take away from this. If I have 53%, what am I doing with this? I know my margin of error is 2.5%.
So would you subtract 2.5 and then do it again plus 2.5?
Yep, so I want to subtract 2.5 and I want to add 2.5. So I'm doing either way on that thing. What's that? 53 minus 2.5 is going to give me what? 50.5? And what? 55.5, I believe is what we're doing. So this is sort of like those confidence things. And they don't really talk about it too much in the book, but the sort of like the more confident you want to be, the larger your interval is going to be, right? You get a sort of trade-off. If we want to be less confident, we can create a shorter interval. But they like to do things at the 95% confidence level. And that's pretty typical. If you go take a stats class, they like to kind of keep it at 95. And it's one of those things that really depends what you're doing and how accurate do you need this thing to be. Should she be confident that she'll have a victory party? What does it say? Does it say she needs majority to win somewhere? Am I reading that somewhere? I feel like that should say majority to win, right? Says it nowhere there. So I'm going to make the assumption that she needs a majority to win. So if she needs a majority to win, how much does she need to win? At least what? What does it take if you get a majority winner? What does it mean to win a majority of the votes?
50%. Over
50%. You got to be over 50%. Can we guarantee that she will be over 50%?
Yes.
Yes, this is over 50%. 50.5 to 55.5. Any number we select in there will be over 50%. Are there questions about this? So this concept, I would just be honest, it like gets a lot more complicated within statistics, right? They're kind of like making it kind of really simple just to try to get you like an idea of like what margin of error is and what a confidence interval is. So we're like, we would say we're 95% confident that she will score between 50.5 and 55.5. So we can say things like that. Hold on. It's blowing up my phone. I don't need that. Consider the following statistical studies. Identify the population parameter, describe the sample and sample statistic, identify the type of study, discuss what additional facts you would like to know before you believe the study or acted on the results of the study. So a Fox News poll of 900 registered voters found that 19% of Americans regift. Women 21% are more likely to regift than men, which is 16%. And the results are nearly independent of income. The margin of error was 3% points. Okay, so what's my population?
So is your
900.
population
Voters.
the
All
registered voters?
The population here. So what is the thing that I'm trying to get at? What is the large set of people that I'm talking about?
The Americans?
The Americans, right? So I'm talking about my population would be the Americans. And what's the population parameter?
The 900 registered voters?
No, it's my sample. What's the metric on my population that I want to know?
Oh, the 19%? No? Yeah,
The
I'm not
percent.
sure.
Yeah, you're getting at it. It's the percent. I don't want the number. I just want the metric. It's the percent of Americans that regift. Percent, I should say, of Americans. Coming from my population, it's the metric on my population. The next thing says what? Sample and sample stat. So what's my sample? What's my sample statistic? So what's the smaller group that I'm taking from there? I'm not going to go survey every single living American out there.
900.
They're going to do the 900 registered people. And the stat on that would be the same thing here, but just with these people, right? Now we're doing the percent of the 900 registered voters that regift. Part B, part C says identify the type of study. So is this an experiment or is this an observational?
Observational.
Observational. Did you give them a placebo gift? No, we didn't. That's observational. Is it a case study? I think is the next thing they said.
Is it a case study?
Yeah, I don't think this would be a case study.
No, this is the other one. It's
I don't think.
a retrospect or whatever.
No, I don't think. I'm not sure it would be retrospective. I'm trying to think.
Okay, so could this be?
Because we're serving it whether they regift or gift. There's no other variable there that I'm seeing that it's dividing into besides gifting and regifting. Men and women maybe, but that seems more like stratification than it seems like they're sorting themselves, you know? That seems more like subgroups, not necessarily behavior that's leading to this, right? I would say probably not. I don't see it there, but I could be off. Discuss what additional factors you would like to know before you believe the study or acted on the results of the study. So the margin of error was 3% points. I think that's something maybe to discuss. What are they saying that on? Because I'm not really sure, to be honest. Are they saying that on the 19%? Are they saying it on the 21%? Or are they saying it on the 16%?
I think it's in the 19%.
Yeah, it doesn't say. It could be on all of them.
It says, okay, so they say that the 900 registered voter poll, they found that 19% out of that vote, out of that 900. So do we take 19% of the 900 to gain to find the 3 percentage point?
No, the percentage point comes off of your percent. So if we want to talk about
the margin of error, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you want to talk about your margin of error being 3%, you're doing it right here. So 19 minus 3 is going to give me what? 16. 19 plus 3 is going to give me 1922. So we have a confidence interval that goes from 16 to 22% if there's a 3% margin of error, right? And that's why I was asking, is it the same for these? Because they're not super obvious in how they're wording this, whether it also influences, whether it's influencing these. Because if it is, that's what, 18? Yeah, it's 18 to what, 24 here? This could be 18 to 24. That means this could be what, 13 to 19. If you notice, these things are now overlapping. We said women do it more than men, but that may not be the case if this is 19 and this is 18, right? So their margin of error throws this being more than that, it throws it off. Does that make sense, hopefully? We're going 3% up and down. If that's the case, then this could potentially be 19. This could potentially be 18, right?
So it's like 16 plus 3.
I'm doing 19 minus 3, and I'm doing 19 plus 3.
Oh, okay.
I'm doing 21 minus 3 and 21 plus 3. A phenomenon of stereotype threat occurs when people, often women and minorities, are reminded before taking a test that the test will be used to evaluate intellectual and academic abilities. Studies show that test performance declines significantly when such reminders are given compared to performance when they are not given. So this is a real thing that happens. This kind of reminds me, oh man, I'll remember her name in a second. Jane Elliott, that's her name. The whole like blue eyes, brown eyes experiment. I don't know if y'all have looked at those videos or not, but they usually show them in like a psychology or sociology class to like represent. What she did is she divided her class into people that have blue eyes and brown eyes. And one day she acted like one was supreme, and then the other day she acted like the other one was supreme. And like, I don't remember where she taught. It was in a very, very rural, sort of really racially stagnant sort of area. And so she was trying to teach about racial discrimination, right? In a place that didn't have a very, what do you want to say, diverse sort of crowd happening there, you know? But yeah, it is a really good sort of thing to watch. If you go look at the blue eyes, brown eyes experiment, I'm telling you, it's a really good thing. Take a lot of knowledge from that. But with that said, the way that she treated her students, right? If she treated like the brown eyes like they were stupid because they had brown eyes, they would actually perform worse off. Like this is something that actually happens, right? When people are told that they are not as good at something, they actually don't perform as good at it. Oh, what a surprise, but you know. It does actually physically like do something, right? So what are they saying? What do they want us to do? Population. What's our population here? So what are we trying to get at?
Is it the stereotype threat?
That's what they're trying to talk about. Who is the object of this thing, I think, is what you need to look at.
Is it women or minorities?
Yeah, I think we're going with the population is going to be women or minorities. Are they going with that? I think they're going with the generality of women and minorities, and they want to know the intellectual and academic abilities of them, right? What do they say? They don't really say what the test is. Okay. Oh, my population, my sample is the people that actually got tested. My population parameter, so this is all part of A, this is all part of B over here, I think, right? My population parameter is intellectual and academic abilities. I'd say something like that. Or how they did on the test for that, right? Same thing with my statistic. It is how did these people do on their test? So I'm being kind of lazy. I don't know what to tell y'all. Are there any questions about this one? I feel like this is like, we've done a few of these examples. I feel like y'all should be able to start maybe filling out some of this on your own at some point. Identify the type of study. So what type of study is this?
Experimental?
Yes. So I would say that they're probably experimenting. They're probably going and telling people something before they take the test here. They're telling some people something, and then the other people, they're not telling anything, right? So they're creating a control and variable group, right? Discuss what additional facts you would like to know before you believe the study or acted on the results of the study. So what's something else that might be a factor here? And there's something that kind of pops to mind. If you're looking at women and minorities and you're looking at a group that has been historically deprived of wages, you might want to look at what wages people are making as well, right? That's the first sort of thing that kind of pops into my brain. If you got more money, typically you can afford better education, right? It is a factor. Are there questions over this one? I know I kind of didn't write anything out on that last one. I just kind of spoke on a lot of it. Okay. So we have a few problems from the next section. Based solely on the information given, do you have reason to question the results or the methods used in the following hypothetical studies? Explain your reasoning. So in this section, where is it at? Well, I ain't got those notes. Okay. If you go look at your notes, they give you 8 criteria to judge this thing off of, right? In the book, they talk about the 8 criteria. So number 1 is get a big picture view of the study, consider the source, look for bias in the sample, look for problems in defining and measuring the variables of interest, beware of confounding variables, consider the setting and wording in surveys, check that results are presented fairly, And then 8 was stand back and consider the conclusions. So we're going to read through these, and it's probably going to be one of those 8 sort of things that they kind of try to highlight or in the guidelines for evaluating a statistical study. So a study by the Liberal Center for Action Progress is designed to assess a new Republican budget plan. So this is sort of like devil's advocate playing like, what is wrong with this thing, right? Why would you might not believe this? Why might you question this? Yeah.
Because it's a liberal center.
Yeah, they're trying to get at, there might be some political biasing, right? This center is a liberal center, and they are doing a study on a Republican budget plan. So there is a potential for bias here, is what they're trying to get at. Okay, TV talk show host asks the audience to text, 1 for if they support, and 2 if they oppose a new law requiring background checks for purchase of firearms. What are they saying in? Are they saying bias?
This
What
be a
about this one?
participation bias?
Yes, you would get participation bias. Motivated by the issue aren't going to talk, right? Okay, so how does this differ? And I like this. This is the first thing like I popped in my brain. I was like, okay, well, how does that differ from the Gallup poll? The Gallup poll uses phones. The Gallup poll doesn't rely on people calling them, right? So they actually go and call people. So I think that's probably where they minimize their participation bias with the Gallup poll. But if you're just like call in, then you're definitely getting a lot of participation bias because only people that want to participate are going to participate, right? Versus if you go to someone's door or you call someone, that's how you minimize sort of things like participation bias. You give them like a sort of social objective to want to take the quiz, right? It's like, I'm here in front of you as a person. Do this for me. Okay. Researchers designed 5 survey questions that determine whether Europeans are more optimistic than Americans. And which one was this? They said bias, but I think this is. Where is? Where did they say? Where was the one that they say consider? Oh, consider the source, right? I think it's number 2. I think this one there. This one they're hinting at the bias in the sample. Number 3. And in this one, they're saying researchers designed 5 survey questions to determine whether Europeans are more optimistic than Americans. So what would be flawed with this sort of survey or this study? Why would it be good or why would it not be good?
The researchers, like who the researchers are?
So I don't think it's really talking about the researchers. It didn't really say anything about them.
Would it be because it's a little too broad of a generalization for as far as Europeans go, like where are they from in Europe, or would it be like a selection bias?
I think it's this thing right here. How do you measure whether someone's more optimistic, right? It's like that weird thing where if you ask someone, are they happy? How do you define happiness? How do you define if they asked if more Europeans were more in love than Americans or something like that, right? How do we define things like along that? So these things are not sort of well-defined sort of principles, right? They are purely like subjective. What does it mean to be more optimistic? There might be like some metrics maybe you could grab that might show optimism, right? But that's not the same thing as asking someone if they are optimistic or not optimistic. And so which one was that? Consider confounding? No. Look for problems in defining or measuring the variables of interest. So this was like number 4. It's not well defined. Not well defined. Right. And it's because they're asking, the main thing here, they're asking like an opinion question. It's like, how do you measure an opinion, right?
So is the variable more optimistic?
Yes, exactly. That's their variable of interest, right? The variable of interest is well defined.
Okay, and so it's this would be a selection of bias because you're targeting the Europeans in the character of Americans.
No, this is not selection bias. This is just this variable is not well defined, right? They are selecting Europeans from Europeans. They're selecting Americans from Americans.
Okay.
So I'm not sure I would see selection bias in this. It doesn't even tell us how they select people in this one. The main thing here is that they're giving us sort of opinionated sort of statement and trying to make a metric out of it or something, right? One person's optimism might not be another person's optimism, right? We might be defining those things very, very differently. Okay, so based solely on the information given about the following hypothetical studies, decide whether you would believe this stated claim, justify your conclusion. An education research group that tracks tuition rates finds that the tuition at a particular small college is 50% more than it was 10 years ago. So would you believe that claim? Why not? Man, where's everyone go? Seriously? Okay. I guess I'll do something next week then.
I don't see anything wrong with the claim. It seems like it's an educational research group, and 50% more seems right.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty reasonable claim. That's what they say in the back. It's an educational research group. They are in charge of like tracking tuition rates. We would assume that they know how to do proper sampling and things along that nature. So yeah, that's pretty much what the book says. They're like, yeah, we should believe them. 50% increase seems about right for what it's been. Okay. So
It's
that
good.
one,
It's good because why? Because the educational research group?
yeah, because it's an educational research group. We're assuming that they're doing this from an observational study, right? That they're looking at all the people that they have access to good data, that they can look at all the people and look at the rate that's been applied.
Okay.
They can look at different institutions. These are all things that are public knowledge. They're doing it at just a particular college. So I guess that's even easier. They're not even doing it at all colleges, right? Okay. So identify at least one potential source of bias in the following studies or claims. Explain why the bias would or would not affect your view of the study or claim. So grocery shoppers on a Saturday morning are invited to taste test orange juice and vote for their favorite brand. So I think there's really two types of bias that they kind of talk about, right? There's like the participation. So how would participation bias come into here? Would there be participation bias?
Yes,
And how does that factor in?
because of the taste test,
Mhm.
they would be biased depending on the taste and the flavor of the juices.
How does participation bias come into the taste test?
Only people who like orange juice are gonna taste the orange juice.
Exactly. Only people who like orange juice are going to end up tasting the orange juice. You're only going to get people that are optimistic about orange juice here, right?
Or those who want free samples.
Or those who want free samples. Yeah, exactly.
Or that.
People that just brushed your teeth, probably not so much, right? They're like, no, keep that away. Selection. Is there going to be a selection bias here? And where's that coming in?
Only the morning people that shop.
Yeah, I mean, you're selecting a certain grocery store. You're selecting a Saturday morning, right? You're selecting a time and a date. And this selection itself is going to limit the people that participate in there, right? At Saturday morning, like almost like no one that's like freshly 18, right, is going to be up at Saturday morning in a grocery store. You know, like probably going to be hungover on a Saturday morning, right? So you're not getting the people that are partying the night before on the Friday, right? You're getting probably the older people than the people that are hungover. So that's what I would say there, right? You're getting a certain population by selecting a grocery store, by selecting a Saturday morning. Those things create biases within your sample. I think that's the important thing to take away from that selection bias. Participation bias is the only people that want orange juice or that want a free sample are going to try that thing. All right, so next thing, an article in the Journal of Nutrition noted that chocolate is rich in flavonoids. It is 2:36 now. If you got to get somewhere, you can get somewhere. The article reports that regular consumption of foods rich in flavonoids may reduce the risk of coronary heart disease. The study received funding from Mars Inc., the candy company, and the chocolate manufacturer. So where's the bias coming in here?
Funding.
The funding. So they talk about this and consider the source, right? That was like number 2 that they talked about this.
So this is a selection bias because they're all chocolate manufacturers, aren't they? Is that right?
I would say that I don't really think they're trying to highlight participation and selection bias in this one. I think they're trying to highlight the source bias, which is more. And I think they're trying to get back at that rule number 2, where you should consider the source of the study, right?
Oh.
This is a study funded by a candy company telling you that candy is good. Not the most reliable source there, right? It reminds me of, there was a cereal company, and I don't remember which one it was. It was like Kellogg's or General Mills, one of the big ones. And they were like,
how do we?
They were like, eating our cereal will help you perform like 10% better or something like that. And it turns out they were comparing it to not eating anything at all, which is not a good study, right? It's like, well, compared to starving to death, it's like our cereal is good for you. Like,
oh my God.
Okay.
So how do
You
you
definitely have to look at who's doing the study and how they're doing the study.
Okay, so let me ask a question. When you look at that last question, do you consider it? What do you consider it?
This one would be a consider the source, right? Would be it would be the bias one. About the biases. I guess this is about a bias, but there's a separate one that is about explicitly about participation and selection, right? And it's number what? 3. Look for bias in the sample. Bias in the sample. Right? And this one is more like a bias in the source that you're getting the study from. There were 8 different criteria. Do what now?
Would this be like a bias of money?
Yeah, I mean it's a conflict of interest, right? So to speak. They have an interest in trying to promote their own product. But yeah, the book calls it a source bias, I think is what they say, or consider the source, right?
Okay, so I'm kind of okay. Hold on, Professor. Okay, so I'm just trying to think something here. Okay, so they're trying to reduce the risk of coronary heart disease. So I'm just trying to figure out how they figured. I mean, I'm just trying to get the understanding of the source part. So is it not? It's not the candy no more. It's the okay. So the variable is to reduce the risk of coronary heart disease. Okay, so are we looking at the the chocolate manufacturers? Or are we looking at the study received from Mars Incorporated?
Mars Incorporated is the chocolate manufacturer.
Okay, so are we looking at the study received from the funding?
Yeah, they are the one paying for the study, is what it's saying.
Okay, but
they're the ones producing the study, right? They are the source of the study. They're producing a study that says that chocolate is good for you, and they are manufacturing chocolate.
Right.
And so
Right. Of course, they're going to say that because they're in the chocolate business.
Yeah, so that's a bias right there.
So that's considered.
Like
yeah, that's where they're getting at here. Is you need to consider the source of who's telling you this, right? We haven't looked at why they're saying this at all. We haven't looked at anything about the study, right? Which is something you should probably do afterwards. But this in itself brings a lot of skepticism as to whether it's actually a valid study, right?
Yeah, because
exactly. That's all the knowledge is that, like, hey, it's a candy company making a study that says candy is good for you. Should I believe it? Probably not, right? I should probably look more into it before I just start blindly accepting whatever they're saying. So it's all in the wording. So if you looked at your notes, you got a fun little experiment probably about whether or not you can remember how a car wreck happened. But I put a short little brain games video in the notes. But I was trying to get at the wording, right? The way that you word things can be really, really influential into how people answer them. And it's something that comes up when we do studies. It's something that comes up if you go into law enforcement and you have to conduct investigations. The way that you question people can absolutely change the way that they answer things. So it's something to maybe take into note, right? So they asked 2 questions. Do you personally believe that abortion is wrong? And whatever your personal view of abortion, do you favor or oppose a woman in this country having the choice to have an abortion with the advice of her doctor? So the first one, they get like what, a 57% respondents say yes, 36% say no. And the second question, 69% say yes, and 24% say no. And discuss why the 2 questions produce seemingly contradictory results. How could the results of the question be used selectively by various groups? So why do they produce different results?
I would say because of the word in the first question, the word wrong.
Yeah.
And the picture that depicts in people's minds. And then like in that video when they talked about the word favor. Most people would say yes to a favor.
Yeah, people generally want to be agreeable, right, with things. They typically kind of want to go with the flow for the most part. So if you ask someone, do you favor something? They're generally going to it's going to promote them to say yes, right? Also the sort of wording, and it's within the wording, and like when people try to argue these points, right? No one's going to go argue that you're pro-abortion. They're going to argue that they're pro-rights. No one's going to argue that they're anti-women's rights. They're going to argue that they're anti-abortion, right? So sort of like, if I wanted you to ask do you personally believe that abortion is wrong? I could like maybe rephrase this. Do you believe that women should have rights, right? Is another way you could phrase it. Someone's probably not going to answer no to that, right? So just in the way you phrase your question can lead people to answer one way or another. And then the other thing,
So
these aren't mutually exclusive questions either. You can believe abortion is wrong and you can believe that women should still have a right to choose, right? So I guess there is like, probably they're not exactly mutually exclusive questions.
do they
There's some
consider these
overlap that can
spurious?
happen there.
So is this a spurious relationship?
No,
Okay.
I would not say so.
Okay.
Discuss why the two questions produce seeming contradictory results. Okay. And how could the results of the questions be used selectively by various groups? So I kind of talked about that, but if I was opposing abortion, I would probably ask it the first way, right? If I was pro women's rights, I would probably ask it the second way, basically, right? But to be honest, you should ask your questions in a way that actually give you a response that is accurate, right? That's what I would say. Like, I would not ask it in either way. I would try to ask it in the most quote unquote, like sort of unbiased way that you could, right? Without trying to influence the way that they answer it. That is ideally what you should do, right? People that have their own self-interest will lead you to answer one way or the other because they have a self-interest in you answering it one way or the other, and they want to promote themselves, right? If you really want to get at the truth, you should try to do it in a way that doesn't lead people. And in general, we should probably try to get at the truth rather than just promoting our own self-agenda, right? That's kind of my belief. I don't know.
I'm okay. Cool. Go ahead. Okay, Professor. So are we still there on the question? 35.
35. I think I
So
kind
are
of.
we? I'm just trying to figure out what is the answer. I'm trying to figure out what is the answer to these questions. I mean, are we answering? Like, are
You're
we
gonna have
putting
to find. I don't know how to. Like, I'm not really sure because you're gonna have to kind of answer that on your own. I've given you a sort of direction to talk about these things, right? Why do they seem to produce contradictory results? It's because of the wording of the question, right? How could the results of the questions be used selectively by various groups? Well, if I was pro-abort or anti-abortion, I would pick this, right? If I was pro-woman's choice,
Okay.
I would pick that one. Just because of how they're worded and how they lead people, right? Consider the following headlines, each followed by a brief summary of a study. Discuss whether the headline accurately represents the study. The headline says drugs shown in 98% of the movies. The story summary: a government study claims that drug use, drinking, and smoking was depicted in 98% of the top movie rentals. So do these match up? They sound really similar.
Yeah, come on.
There is one little thing.
There's a possibility on both of them. Drugs showing at 98% because, you know, drinking, you're smoking.
There's
I mean,
one
like,
little word that really they highlight on, and it's that word, right? And if they put that word in there, it changes the claim. Do y'all see why they're saying that now? This is 90% of
the top movie rentals.
this is not top movie rentals. If I say drugs are shown in 98% of movies, that means they are shown in all movies. If I'm talking about the top rentals, that is not all movies, right?
Right.
And so in the book, I believe this is what they say in the back. They say that these are not the same claim because this is talking about all movies and this one is talking about just the top rental movies. If we do all the indie films, it's probably more like 99.9%, right? No, I don't know. It's,
Or all the action movies, or all the spy movies, or other.
yeah,
I'm
it's
just, I mean, it's usually every movie you watch, they're drinking,
pretty,
you know, or they're smoking cigarettes. I mean, I don't care what movie it is. I ain't never seen a movie where nobody's drinking and nobody's smoking,
yeah.
besides Disney. And I mean, even there, and they're still drinking. This holiday cheer, they drink.
Well, I didn't realize this, but like in commercials, they got to be really careful with what they show too, with like drinking in commercials. It's a really weird thing. They're not actually allowed to show people drinking, I think, is what it is. They're allowed to show people like holding the beverage and stuff. It's really weird. But if you notice, they never drink from it, I think, is the thing. There's like certain stipulations that they can't do because they consider it promoting alcohol abuse or something. I don't know.
Wow. So that other top movie, which I know that it's in there, is called.
So in the movies, they probably don't care too much, but in commercials, commercials about it, they're really strict, which is really weird because a lot of movies are just commercials for products nowadays. It's just, they ain't got much structure in the movie. It's just like an overhyped commercial. Yeah, seen a few of those. So what is the question? Discuss the differences between the following questions, each of which could be the basis for a statistical study. What percentage of internet dates lead to marriage? What percentage of marriages begin with internet dates? So what's the difference between the two questions? Yeah, this really reminds me of something we had earlier in the course, if I'm being honest.
This is kind of going back to the logic thing where the first question, they're kind of assuming that if you have an internet date, it may lead to marriage, or that it could possibly lead to marriage.
Yeah, you got
And
the
the second
spot.
question is like asking, or is kind of insinuating that if you get married, it's because you had an internet date.
Yeah. The
Yeah, I'm
internet is-
seeing like this sort of thing that we did, right? If we get married and have an internet date, yes or no? Right? One of them is like, given that we were married. Wait, what percentage of internet dates lead to marriage? This would be like that whole thing, given that we were on the internet, what is the probability that we got married? Versus like, given that we were married, what is the probability that we were on the internet, right? Those two things are different questions. So I would say this one is like you're given. Oh shoot, hold on, let me look. Percentage of internet dates. Sorry, wrong. What percentages of marriages begin with internet dates? So this one is assuming they are married. So given that they are married, or assuming that they are married, this is the probability that they met online, right? That is different from this sort of thing. Given or assuming that they are met online, right? Given they met online. This is like the mammogram table sort of thing, right? Given that you get a positive mammogram, what's the odds that you actually have the disease sort of thing? Very similar, right? Given a mammogram test, a positive is different from actually having the disease, right? Or given that you have the disease, what is the probability you will test positive? So this, hopefully in your mind, it looks sort of analogous to the things we did with like mammograms and that sort of logic sort of stuff back then.
So the variable is all married couples, because it demographs married people. So should we say the variable is all married people? I mean, can we say that?
Yeah, so the population here would be the married people, right?
Yeah.
And the population in the first one would be the internet people or the
Okay.
internet dating people. So even the populations that we're looking at are drawing from are different, right?
Yes. So that sample, the sample is the dates, internet dates, and the
So I would look at like this is probably like control versus variable, or maybe even like one of the strata that they're dividing it into, right? They're gonna have people that after you look at the population of people married, you're gonna look at the people that had internet dates, and you're gonna look at the people that didn't have internet dates and compare them, right?
Right.
This one, you're gonna look at everyone that dated online, and then you're gonna look at did they marry or not.
Right. So on the
So
sample
those are looking
stat,
at
what's the sample stat?
the sample would be. They might just be doing the entire population on this one, to be honest. Because on internet dates, you can probably just look at that data pretty straightforward. And
But I
with-
thought it was just the
and with
percentage.
marriages, it doesn't really say what the sample is here, to be honest, right?
Right. Percentage of.
Um,
Okay,
it's
so
not
all I know
really-
is internet dates. That's all I know. Is the sample is internet dates. We just gotta know, and the population is the married people. We just gotta know if they were married from the internet or if the marriage began with the internet date.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
or
So
if the internet date led to the marriage.
So the way that the back of the book explains it is that the questions have different populations. So if we're talking about the population of this first one, we're talking about people that dated online, right? And if we're talking about the population of the second one, we're talking about the people that got married.
Okay.
And so if I wanted to rephrase these questions, I could say, out of the people that did internet dates, how many of them got married? And that's a different question than asking of the people that got married, how many of them started out on the internet? And if you wanted to throw in numbers into a table or something, or totals, right? It was sort of like that mammogram table, right? That we did way back when. Or it should look pretty similar.
Oh wow.
Remember when we did that?
Yeah.
And so like the first one would be what percentage of internet dates. So we would only be looking for like this one. But if we want to look at the other one, right? It's a bit of a different population. You might be grabbing one of the same numbers. Out of the people that got married, what is that one?
So it's inconclusive because we have no numbers,
And we could
unless we can make them up.
just make them up. And so if you're thinking about this, would this be the same number? This would be 3 out of 6. Pick some easy numbers. This would be 3 out of 100, or this would be 3%. So they wouldn't even give you the same number if we did analyzed it with the table, right?
Right.
Unless we got really just pretty numbers that just happen to match up, right? But most of the time they're not.
Okay.
But yeah, they are asking different questions. They are drawing from different populations. All right, so I'm going to stop there.